Hi, and welcome to TXDZNY. On today's show, I'm going to be talking about some interesting facts about Walt Disney World. Now, obviously, Walt Disney and Walt Disney World have lots of facts about them and interesting things. So I'm not going to be able to talk about everything, obviously, on this episode. But I am going to be talking about 15, 20 of some really cool facts and interesting facts about Walt Disney World itself, the parks there, that might be interesting to some of you. Some of you might know some of these, and then some are some very interesting facts that not a lot of people know. So I'm just going to be doing a little rundown of some of these cool little facts about Walt Disney World. So to start, I'll talk about Walt Disney himself and how he related to Disney World. What a lot of people don't know is that Walt Disney ever never actually got to see Disney World open. He passed away 5 years before Disney World opened. Now, make no mistake, Disney World was his idea. He had big plans. He didn't like how small the land was at Disneyland in California. So he wanted to do a huge, huge project out there in Florida, which he called the Florida Project. And he purchased a bunch of land, and I'll get into that later on the show. And he already, before he passed away, had big plans for the park Epcot. He knew he wanted to do two parks already. Keep in mind that Disneyland at this point was only Disneyland. So there wasn't a California Adventure. So he already knew when he was building Disney World and had the plans for Disney World that he wanted to for sure do a second park in Epcot. Epcot was like his little baby that he really had a huge desire to do before he passed away. Now, it is important to mention Walt Disney's brother, Roy E. Disney. Roy E. Disney is pretty much the one who did everything with Walt Disney. He was kind of the financial back behind the whole entire Walt Disney Corporation. He was the one who would often just allow Walt's imagination to go. So he actually retired a little bit before Walt passed away and Disney World was supposed to be starting its construction and everything like that. But when Walt passed away, Roy E. Disney, his brother, unretired because he knew it was his brother's wish to have Disney World out there in Florida. Roy oversaw Magic Kingdom and Disney World come together, and he really, really wanted to make sure he can have his brother's dream come to life. Sadly, he did pass away just a couple months right after Magic Kingdom opened and Disney World opened. Right before all that, he wanted to change the name of it was Walt Disney's idea to name it Disney World. You know, obviously like Disneyland, but he wanted to throw his brother's first name into it. So that's why you see Disney World is actually Walt Disney World, and that was Roy E. Disney's idea to change it to Walt Disney World instead of just Disney World. Next, I want to talk about Walt Disney's vision for Epcot. Um, Walt actually wanted Epcot to be a living community. He wanted to be like a park and everything like that, but he wanted to be a living community. In fact, he wanted between like 10 to 20,000 people to be residing there and have it like a little bit futuristic and play some homage to a lot of different things. Um, but once he passed away and they decided to go forward with the Epcot project after Walt and Roy passed away, Imagineers just kind of figured it was going to be way too hard to have a living community like that mixed in with a park. So they did try to do as much as what they could on what Walt wanted to in Epcot. And that's a lot of what you see today, like the future worlds and World Showcase and all that. Those are little bits that Walt wanted in Epcot, but it was supposed to be a living community, and that never came to fruition. Next, I want to talk about that there's a whole world underneath Magic Kingdom. Some people know this that Magic Kingdom's technically, if you want to call it, on the second level there. There's a whole underground world of under Magic Kingdom. This is how cast members for Walt Disney World get around the Magic Kingdom park, from it being characters being able to go and different cast members from break rooms. This is where a lot of the trash stuff goes down there. And Walt had a big vision when he was thinking about Disney World. He didn't like that, let's say you were in Fantasyland, that you'd be able to maybe see that character in Tomorrowland, that they shouldn't be, the land shouldn't be mixed together. Like, for example, obviously this was before then, so this is just a present day example, is that you shouldn't be able to see Buzz Lightyear in Frontierland, let's say. Those lands don't really mix together. So not just having the these cast members walking around in different lands with different uniforms on that don't appropriately go to that land. To do this, there's actually not several, there's tons of little ways for cast members and doors that takes them down underground. A lot of them are in buildings and stuff that you can't see, and this allows them to be able to have access to the underground. And when you're underground, you are able to know exactly kind of where you are. There's little signs that let you know where you are throughout the whole underground as well. Once you know that there's a underground to Magic Kingdom, it kind of makes sense. If you look when you're walking into Magic Kingdom, whether you're taking bus, boat, monorail, you'll notice that the grade of the land there walking up to Magic Kingdom is like always kind of slowly rising, even once you go in the park, and that's because it's allowing that underground level and having all these areas for cast members to travel underneath Magic Kingdom. A big thing Walt wanted to prioritize in all of his parks was cleanliness. He didn't want it to be like a lot of parks that you see where there's just trash and stuff all over the place. At Magic Kingdom and Disney World, um, he was able to make sure that these things didn't happen. In fact, throughout all Disney parks, you'll never see a trash can more than 30 feet away from one another. So where it always appears that there is access to a trash, so people just don't throw the trash on the ground because the trash can looks very close to them. Another thing that he didn't want in the parks was gum. If you notice, you can't buy gum at Disney World. And that was just obviously people, when they get rid of gum, a lot of times just throw it on the ground, spit it out. And he didn't want that to be part of his parks. So if you see gum at Disney World, people got it outside of Disney property. Another really cool thing of the Magic Kingdom underground system is that they have an automated vacuum system. And this allows trash to be transported to their own little facility to get rid of waste. And these little vacuums that they have can make trash travel like to 50, 60 miles an hour to get to these things. So getting rid of trash at Magic Kingdom is very, very efficient, if you want to call it that, which I think is pretty cool how they designed the whole entire thing, even back in the 60s and 70s, and have progressed it over the years to get rid of trash and make everything so fluid at this Magic Kingdom park. Next is that Disney uses this color called Go Away Green. If you notice, whenever there's construction walls and anything going under construction, Disney uses this color to kind of trick your eyes. They did lots of studies to see what could it's a color that kind of makes you not focus on it. So it makes when guests are inside Disney parks where they don't really focus on this color because of studies that they've used. And it makes it, if you notice, they use it for no matter what, that Tiana's Bayou Adventure just opened up. All the walls there with this Go Away Green, no matter what it is, there's always construction at Disney World. You'll see this Go Away Green color because their studies have shown that your eyes don't focus on this color as much as other colors. When Walt was purchasing land in Central Florida and decided on the Orlando area, he purchased, it wound up being 30,000 acres of land there. But he did this under a couple different names so that the swamp landowners in Central Florida wouldn't upcharge it, knowing that Disney was purchasing the land there. The big reason Walt wanted so much land there, like I touched on earlier, was he didn't like how close everything was at Disneyland, where if you were on a ride, you can maybe see the McDonald's in the distance. He didn't want that at Disney World. He wanted to be, when you were at Disney World, it felt like you were in your own little city town, which in fact, Walt Disney World pretty much is its own little town and city. When Disney was purchasing that land is roughly about the size of San Francisco, which is about the size of two Manhattan Islands, which is pretty impressive that he did all that actually under different names before these swamp landowners wound up realizing that it was Walt Disney purchasing the land and he was going to be doing this huge project there in Central Florida. So inside Disney's parks there at Walt Disney World, they don't have any structures higher than 200 feet or 199 feet, I should say. That's because Florida aviation laws state that if you have any structure higher than 200 feet, It needs to have a flashing light so airplanes can see this. So because of that, you'll never see any really some structures inside Disney parks higher than this. Maybe you'll see some things outside like hotels and stuff like that, but they don't want any flashing lights in their parks in the evenings. So like for example, Cinderella Castle sits at 189 feet. And big reason for that is that they don't want a flashing light on the top of Cinderella Castle. So Disney is also loaded with these thing called smellitizers. So what is a smellitizer? It's a scent pumped into areas throughout Disney parks, and they try to correlate it to what makes sense for that area. So it might be different foods. It might be popcorn, baked goods, sugar treats, leather, and different things like that to try to trick your senses into wanting certain things in certain areas. A big they do this big time on Main Street in Magic Kingdom. You'll notice all these different scents. It's not not the shops that you're just 100% smelling. It's these smellitizers. And then when you see how the technology with some of these rides have gone, it makes sense. Think of all these rides that have their certain individual scents to them, like Soarin' obviously changes one, but like Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion, a lot of these rides have their certain scents that are very distinct to them, and that is because of these smellitizers that Disney uses to almost like I don't want to say trick your brain, but it's really kind of making your brain focus on these scents and kind of guiding your brain to that. So they use this throughout all these parks, and even in the resorts, you'll notice some of these scents as well. Next, I want to talk about how Disney World uses force perspective, is what they call it. And what is force perspective? It's when you're almost tricking your eyes. So, like, you'll see this throughout almost all their parks. And you'll see it the most kind of at Magic Kingdom. You notice even when you're walking down Main Street, what'll happen is when you're walking those buildings when you're walking down Main Street aren't as large as they appear. They make the windows as the building goes up smaller and smaller, so it makes it appear that they're larger than what it is. Same thing with Cinderella Castle. They make these bricks and windows and everything smaller as it goes up, making it appear larger than it actually is. You even do this at like a park like Epcot, where they try to make the Eiffel Tower, for instance, in France, appear bigger than it is when it in fact isn't that large. And believe it or not, Disney actually does this in reverse in some buildings where they need to make it smaller, appear smaller um, to the eye, even though the building might be bigger. Where they'll put larger windows and bricks and stuff like that on the tops of the buildings, and the smaller windows and bricks on the lower parts of the buildings. For example of this is the main building there in America Adventure in Epcot. Disney World was very smart when they were constructing Walt Disney World. Most of their buildings and everything in their parks are built to be able to handle winds upwards of 125 miles per hour. This is big time true for their resorts. In fact, a lot of locals and even just people like somewhat near the Orlando area during hurricane season and when the winds are going to get bad, you will see flee over to these Disney resorts because they know that they are able to withstand these winds and these storms because they constructed them that way. So Disney did a great job in preparing for what some of these Florida storms might be. To piggyback off of that, especially since we're in the summer season where it seems to rain and maybe a little bit of storms almost every day there in Central Florida, um, Disney throughout its parks and resorts and everything like that, they have lightning rods that they hide very, very well. And this is, obviously to try to divert these lightning strikes. And they are very hard to see, and obviously you don't know what's at top of them. One of the main ones that is noticeable that you don't know until I'm about to tell you this is that right when you enter Hollywood Studios and you see Mickey way up there on the top of that pole where it's rotating, Mickey's ear is made of copper, which is a lightning rod. So that is one of the high points there. And so it's a way to, it's in essence a lightning rod in the entrance of the park. And they do this throughout all their parks to try to put on there some of the higher buildings and things like that have these little lightning rods to try to deter any lightning from actually hitting down on the ground inside the parks. So Disney World, believe it or not, has more employees than all the other Disney parks, including Disneyland and all the parks throughout the world combined. Disney World itself has between 75 and 80,000 employees. So that is more than all the other parks combined, as I said. And when you start thinking about it, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. They have a ton of resorts, which a lot of these other places only have, maybe one or two or three resorts. There's four parks, two water parks, a gigantic area in Disney Springs. So it starts making sense when you start thinking about it. Able to keep those parks clean, the construction areas. So there's a lot of employees employed by Walt Disney World. So if you've ever noticed when you're in Epcot, and you might be able to see Tower of Terror when you're looking at the Morocco Pavilion. If you notice the colors of Tower of Terror and the Morocco Pavilion are very similar. And Disney did that where they don't really want you seeing other parks when you're inside the other park, where you're engulfed in that park. So they made these colors very similar. So when you're in the when you have a few angles where you can see Tower of Terror when you're inside Epcot looking through the Morocco Pavilion, that it almost kind of blends in. Now, for some of you music fans, it is known that John Lennon of the Beatles, one of the greatest bands ever, that he signed his papers to officially end the band of the Beatles at the Polynesian Resort. You cannot. There's a certain room that people kind of know where this happened, and it is kind of odd that one of the greatest bands in the history of what we know officially kind of broke up at Walt Disney World at the Polynesian. World Showcase at Epcot consists of 11 countries. That walk around World Showcase is in fact 1.2 miles. So it's a lot longer than some people think, because you kind of, going into shops and stuff, and it can kind of distract you. Another thing to note of this is that there's lots of areas for expansion in this, and Epcot kind of did that on purpose, where there is room. They haven't expanded in quite some time, but there are lots of areas where they could in the future. There's no exact rumors to this or anything like that, but there are spots for other countries in World Showcase. You'll see a lot of flags at Walt Disney World. Most of these flags are not real. When I say most, almost all of them. Most of them are pennants, actually, or they're missing a star or multiple stars, or missing a stripe or multiple stripes. And this is so they don't have to follow the flag etiquette that you're supposed to um, for Americans and doing this. This includes flying flags at half mast and things like that you're supposed to follow with flag etiquette. Disney World didn't want to have to sit there and have people walking into their parks and see a flag at half mast because of something happened. They kind of wanted the spirit to be kind of, high and people excited to be in there and not thinking about that stuff. There are real flags at Walt Disney World, but there's not very many of them. And those flags, they do follow the flag etiquette and do everything. You'll see right when you walk into Main Street, they have a really good flag ceremony, and that's a real flag, and that's a really good one to pay attention to. What no Disney park in the world will ever challenge is the amount of resorts and rooms and everything that Walt Disney World has. Walt Disney World resorts have over 30,000 rooms. It's over 36,000 if you include their Good Neighbor hotels as well, including like the Swan and Dolphin and resorts like that. Walt Disney World as a whole being the most popular four parks, if you want to call it that, among all the other things there. They, on average, have over 58 million guests a year, which is quite astonishing. I think Disney's done a great job of adding rides back there in World Showcase with obviously Ratatouille, Frozen, and Three Caballeros. But in the original plans for Germany for World Showcase, there was supposed to be a ride much like Maelstrom, which was what Frozen replaced, where it was going to be a boat ride that took you along the Nile River and kind of just give you a little bit of history of the country of Germany. That never came to fruition, and they wound up just making the beer garden restaurant quite a bit bigger. But there is a way where they could shorten make Beer Garden a bit smaller, and there is some space back there in the Germany Pavilion if they ever want to add a ride. That was in the original plans for the Germany Pavilion. Now, in a Hollywood Studios, a lot of people don't know, was actually a working studio up until 2004. Disney did a lot of things here with their animators and such like that. In fact, portions of The Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, and Aladdin were all partially animated here. The movies Lilo and Stitch and Mulan were actually almost made fully at Hollywood Studios, with obviously a little bit of help from some of the animators in Disneyland. But almost those two movies are almost fully made there at Hollywood Studios. Another interesting fact about it is that the all-new Mickey Mouse Clubhouse cast that's famously known, that had Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, and Ryan Gosling, they filmed all their stuff there at Hollywood Studios as well. So it was a very, very entertaining park way back when. And now they don't do any of that. But it was a full-on working studio up until 2004 and really kind of thrived there in the 90s. And last but certainly not least, I want to talk about Animal Kingdom and the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is a 145-foot tree there at Animal Kingdom. It has over 8,000 branches on that tree of all different sizes and over 102,000 leaves that are meant to actually blow in the wind and everything like that to look like real leaves. The Tree of Life also features over 337 carvings of existing and extinct animals in the world. And as you'd probably guess, the tree isn't a real tree. It's actually made of concrete, and the base of the tree is actually an oil rig, which is pretty interesting. But it's it's one of my favorite park icons when you're going into a Disney park, and the detail to it is so impressive. So those are some of my interesting facts about Walt Disney World. I hope that was entertaining for you guys and maybe gave you guys a little bit of knowledge of some of history and stuff to Walt Disney World. I really appreciate you guys watching, subscribing, and liking these videos. Thank you again. Bye.